I believe that Jesus Christ will come again to judge the living and the dead. Although often overlooked, Scripture is clear that Christ will come back to enact justice and to judge humanity, all of humanity. There's no escaping his judgment. It's not reserved for those who believe in it or who are expecting it. You will stand before the judgment seat of Christ and give an account for your actions. No matter your race, gender, income, social status, or any other qualifier that we use, you will have to stand before a just king, revealing the truth of who you are. Taking the perfect selfie is a work of art. You need good lighting, the right angle, the perfect background, and then you're able to capture yourself in the way that you would want to be captured. But then when someone sees you in person, they see what you really look like. Similarly, we have a tendency to act and present ourselves as if we are perfect. But when we come face to face with the judge, the reality of who we are will be revealed. Christ tells us that some will be given life and some will be given death. Now let's get something straight. Based on our actions, every single one of us entirely deserves death. Left to our own devices, we would be condemned to an eternal punishment. However, God has adopted some to be his children. If you have surrendered your life to Christ and been united with him, you have been adopted by God and therefore are no longer punished based on your unrighteousness, but are rather blessed because of Christ's righteousness. Those who are adopted by God will be judged according to Christ's righteousness. But it's also incredibly important to recognize that if we are God's children, we will live in accordance with that righteousness. What I mean is that our salvation isn't just a one-time pulling us from our sin. It's also a transformative work that leads to good works. We're not saved because of our good works, but if we have been saved by grace through faith, then we've been created for good works. This is so important that the distinguisher at the judgment of those who receive life or death is that those who are truly saved are the ones that are caring for the poor, welcoming the stranger, clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, and so forth. These things are actively manifesting themselves in the lives of believers. Salvation extends so far past a prayer or one moment to a life of striving for righteous living. This means that your continual anger has no place in your heart. That having sex with someone that's not your spouse ought to be cut from your life. That your addiction to pornography cannot be justified simply as a struggle, but must be recognized as sin in every way contrary to God and must be put to death. We cannot become lazy in our Christianity because God promises to forgive us. No, we must put to death our sin because God has given us grace. We receive life because of grace. Now, live in accordance with that. But we also need to realize that at the judgment, not all receive life, but the majority will be sentenced to an eternal punishment. No matter how good of a person you might be, if you've turned your back on God's call in your life, if you continually disobey God's call to surrender, then you are guilty of disobedience and sin and are entirely deserving of death. If you turn your back to God and fail to surrender to him as Lord, you will spend eternity in the worst kind of punishment. Don't be content with this death. Surrender your heart to Christ today. I plead with you. The life you will experience is far greater than you could ever imagine. And I'd love for you to join us this Sunday at 10 a.m. as we continue our series titled, I Believe. I look forward to seeing you there.